Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Sorry for the late start. I'm having a bit of issues with my internet because my building decided it was a good week to rework the whole internet system, and I've been out of any network for the whole week, having to use my phone currently as a modem to serve myself for internet. So I'm sorry if there's a slight drop in quality, if it gets a bit choppy, but I'm doing with what I have right now. So I hope you'll accept it, and hopefully, any further episode, if there's one next week or whatever. Probably not because Fnatic is out of the current split, but yeah, future episodes should be fine. But in any case, thank you for joining me today for I'm gonna say unfortunate special episode of Inside Fnatic's Brush. Um, an episode I wish I didn't have to make, at least this early into the season, but current situation makes it that we have to talk about Fnatic already within 3 weeks, within 9 games of the 2023 season. As you all know, we did not qualify for the next group stage. Um, this new roster was, I would say, quite divisive in terms of how it was received by the audience. Some people were hyped, some people say it was never going to work, and it seems that the latter were proven correct, unfortunately. And now we'll just, we're going to grieve together. Today we're just going to go over what happened, go through the different elements that didn't work out, and obviously, you know, discuss what we should be looking forward to going into the rest of the season. Obviously, um, well, people already I know have been calling for Dardo to leave. I have a whole segment on Dardo. We'll get to discuss it together. No problem. So I'll get there. I know it's a burning case, and there's a lot to be said on Dardo's involvement in the team and his impact in Fnatic's organization and the consecutive splits. So let's start with the beginning. How about that? And talk about the split, right? Split so far out of 9 games, 2 wins, 7 losses, ninth position. So not even able to make top 8, which I think anyone would consider is or should be an easy reach for an organization, at least like Fnatic, who's always managed to make it into top 6, even with, you know, harder starts. For instance, when we went into 2019 spring split, I think we had like the 6 or 7 loss streak, and then we managed to bring it back. Obviously, more games, so more time to bring it back. But the thing is, when you go into this new format of the season, you need to get players that click immediately. And if we look at each group of games, right, week 1, week 2, week 3, we can see that it's slightly started dwindling down until week 3, where there was just no exit from that point on. You just knew that we weren't qualifying. Week 1 actually started somewhat well. We almost took a game against Vitality. We threw it because we got a bit too excited, gave away too much of our gold, and Vitality has shown already throughout the split that they're able to come back from gold deficits. So we gave them that advantage. We gave them that leverage to get back into the game and close it. The next game we played was against G2, where we got absolutely demolished. So a bit of an outlier. We don't consider it into the bigger scope of things. And in the last games against Koi, We kind of sucked in the early game, but then we brought it back and we eventually won. So first week, was looking, I'd say, okay in average. We go into the second week, we lose to BDS. People are starting to ask questions. Happens that actually BDS is much better than everyone expected, so not as bad in hindsight, but still on the moment, kind of suspicious. We go against Excel. Same against Koi. We lose the early game. Scaling is on their side. We bring it back. Then the last game of the week, which was against, who was it against? I forgot. Team Heretics. Where we were winning the game, and again, just like against Vitality, we threw it away. We got too excited, too much ahead of ourselves, too aggressive, and we gave them the game. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, Toshkata8. Saying, I was never hyped about the roster. We replaced our best players. What exactly they expected to happen? So, okay, that was something I was going to discuss a bit later, but since we're on the subject, there's two ways of seeing this, right? The first one is the one you presented, where it's like, well, obviously, upsetting Hylissang, one of the best bot lanes in the LEC. Why would you replace them, right? Now, as we've seen, towards the end of the season, clearly something was not clicking, right? And so we need to make the changes that are necessary. Now, if we take it, if we take each player individually, Upset and Hylissang, I remember vividly that everyone wanted Hylissang's head on the plate, especially when Rux came in to replace Hylissang, who couldn't be there on time, and played two very good games. And maybe it's a loud minority, but the most vocal fans right there saying, kick Hylissang, he's an inter, kick Hylissang. And then when it was said that he was out, a lot of people said, I'm very happy that he's out. Bringing in new support. People were like, oh yeah, Rux played super well. He's much better than Hylissang, and wanted Rux in. So, while I understand that in hindsight it looks that maybe losing Hylissang was a big mistake, the audience didn't think it was at the time, right? It's now that we're having the bad results that, maybe Hylissang should have stayed. If we take the case for Upset, there's two issues for Upset. Upset didn't want to continue if he wasn't playing with Hylissang, and didn't want it to continue with Fnatic if they didn't change their training environment. Those two elements weren't met, so obviously Upset wanted out, and that was it. It wasn't necessarily Fnatic saying, Upset, we're replacing you with Reckless. That's not what happened. I don't think that's not what they wanted, but they just couldn't come to a common agreement on how to continue together. Another element that you have to include with this bot lane together, especially towards the end of the season last year, is that Hylissang is usually a very roaming style support. You see in Mad Lions how he plays a lot of roaming with Elyoya. Go back to the games that we've had towards the end of the season, he wasn't roaming as much. So that's another issue. It's like, who was locking him in the bot lane, right? Was it Upset? Maybe it would make sense that it was Upset. So we had to find a way to unlock Hylissang. And well, it just happened that Hylissang was better leaving after all. And Hylissang did play for us for like 4 or 5 years, which is quite a lot when you consider like the average length of a player in one roster. Like there's only a handful of players that stay beyond maybe 3 years, right? So I feel we got the most of them. Look like inting sometimes, but that's because he's actually trying to win the game. I mean, I'm not disagreeing. But you have to admit that he was coming to an end with his time on Fnatic. Like he needed to change his environment, needed a change of oxygen for him, and it's working well right now in Mad Lions. So that's how it works. That's how it works. It's unfortunate, like there's a lot of players you want to keep them forever, but it just so happens that they have a best buy date in a certain roster in a certain environment, and then they find like a new. They're reinvigorated. They find their original skills again in a new team because they like the environment, like the people they play with, and if you know anything about Hylissang, he's a very emotional player. So his emotions impact his playstyle. So if he wasn't feeling it anymore in Fnatic and the team spirit was down and he didn't like the synergy with the players, it's going to affect the way he plays as well. So you can't lock him in. We're not G2, right? We don't put shackles onto our players until they eventually leave on their own. And no, Hilly did not leave for free. He still had a year in his contract, so we did sell him. I'm not too sure about the price, but at least the one sale thing that's positive is like our latest transfers didn't go for free, right? Even like Niski, who couldn't find a team, at least when he was given to Mad Lions, he was sold as well. So Hilly won 0-16 last week of Worlds, right? But like that's an individual score that reflects team performance, So it's not like Hylissang is known for having insane KDAs, right? He's known to sacrifice himself a lot to enable his team. And when he suffers very poor KDAs and he's inting almost 20 deaths overall, and the team is not able to get a win at the end of the day, you got to ask yourself some questions, right? So I'll give you this perspective for Upset and Hylissang, right? That, of course, it sucks that we're losing one of the best ADCs of the scene and a support that would work well with him, but you also have to admit that we're coming to an end of this functioning bot lane. So the question is, how do you rearrange this bot lane afterwards, right? Do you try to keep Upset by bringing in someone else? Do you accept his change of work environment, which, again, I don't know what his work environment would look like. Is it something that would impact a lot of players internally and maybe negatively? Or would that mean that if he had to stay, we were changing a lot of players? Again, there's a lot of things to consider, right, in that sense. Bringing in Reckless and Rux on paper looks very poor with a transfer, right? You're like, Jesus, Reckless has been struggling the past 2 years through G2 and K Corp, even though like he did win a trophy on K Corp, or 2 trophies I should say, got EUM and the LFL. And Rux, who has always been navigating in the 2nd division in the ERLs and was never given the opportunity to get experience in the LEC, has a handful of games at Worlds that work well, but against NA and OCE, so it's worth what it's worth, right? And it's very hard to evaluate the potential of a player on a higher stage. The other part that you can see is that when you get feedback from like Yamato saying there's no leader in the team, there's not a big voice, it kind of makes sense to bring in someone like Rux. Rux has always had this role in all the teams he's been in, to be the leader, the sort of the pillar, the one to kind of give the team a direction. And you can hope that it works well with Razorg, who also is a big voice within the team. If you haven't listened to the voice comms that just dropped today, he's the only one who's talking right now, right? But when you're building the roster, you can say, well, it makes sense that maybe you'd want to bring someone like Rux. And then Reckless, the discussion can be very wide, right? You can say, well, Reckless has always performed on Fnatic, so it makes sense to bring him. He can be a very like solid bot laner. He won't be a very aggressive. He's not going to get you the advantage, but he's not just going to hard lose his lane. He'll have an impact maybe a bit later into the game, but he won't be the weak link. And so you you can lose some strengths, like some aggressiveness, but maybe you can have something that's more strategic that can help the team as a whole in exchange. So, you know, there is a form of logic. It's not just, oh my god, replacing two players with two worse players. There's other qualities that are within those players that could have helped the team. Um, why did you choose to go with him when he actually is struggling to play range subs in a range sub meta? The thing is like when you lock in a support in advance, you don't know what the meta is gonna be, right? So I will agree that going with a support that is kind of one-dimensional on the type of support, sorry, that he plays is a bit dangerous, but you can't guess in advance that the meta that's gonna come up is gonna be like mage meta with the Yumis and the Lulus and the Namis. So it's a bit coin flip, and it didn't land on the right side. So that's the problem. Reckless excels at farming 1v2 while the support roams around. Exactly. That was personally my hope, that because this is what would happen when Hilly sang was with the team with Reckless, is that Reckless would be left on the bot lane on an island, and Hillisang would just go around the map. He'd be in the mid lane, he'd be in the top lane, and Reckless would just be like, I'm chill, I'm just here to farm my 200, 300 CS, and I'll join you guys later for the team fight. It seems that this plan really didn't work because, again, looking at what's being said by the team, by Razork's recent stream, is that they never find a way to work together and play together. Like they never agreed on the playstyle, and this massive issue that stemmed from the start was never solved throughout the 3 weeks. And it's hard to know where you have to put the blame, right? Because we don't have enough information. Is it Reckless not willing to break his shell and going into like more aggressive ADCs like Caitlyn, like Lucian, and saying, you know what, screw it, I'm going to play those champions because they're very strong, they're going to give us an advantage in lane, and you're not going to have like two side lanes that are going to hug their turret, and hopefully enemy team is not too proactive that they just crush us in 25 minutes, basically. So that's one of my issues. The other issue is that clearly Rock's roaming wasn't really impactful because we also have a problem that stems from last year as well in our jungle mid synergy, and it's a story as old as time that the best teams are the ones that have the best jungle mid synergy. Across all the seasons, it's always been the same. And last year, Razork and Humanoid really couldn't connect already. We managed to patch it up by instead putting all the resources in our bot lane, allowing Upset to carry, right? But apart from that, we never managed to make stuff really happen through the mid lane. And I was hopeful that if we don't have a very carry-oriented bot lane, that at least we're going to put resources in the mid lane and allow Humanoid to carry, because Humanoid is a very good mid laner. If you look at the games, he's the only one who's doing roughly well, right? So you're expecting, okay, he manages to get advantages on his own, maybe we can try to snowball him and let him carry, let him direct the pace of the game. It didn't happen. So while I'll accept all the criticism of the skill of the players, the way they could have played the game with the pieces they had within the roster was not executed. And that's my biggest gripe with the team. It's like, okay, we don't keep Upset, we don't keep Hillisang, fine. It's not like we've won anything with them, right? But you bring in those players who are technically a bit weaker but have strengths in other aspects in the game. So you have to use those strengths and then enable them within the team to allow to get wins overall. And it's just putting pieces of a puzzle that aren't even from the same boxes, so it's not gonna fit. You know, so that didn't work from the start. Coaching staff didn't manage to solve it, which really is one of the biggest disappointments, because I feel like we had finally a very strong coaching staff with Sense, Hiva, and Crusher, and I don't know again what happens behind the scenes, so we can't just put it all on them, but clearly they're missing something as well, right? To not be able to patch things up internally so that at least we get to 8th place, and then we can work on it, and then get into best of threes, which are another scenario altogether again. What is the direction we need to go in order to never... What is the direction we need to go in order never to repeat this kind of disaster of a split, especially when it's so far to... Yeah, so I'll talk about the direction right at the end. That's my final point. But it is very difficult, and it's going to be probably the biggest challenge that Fnatic is going to face. And there's two scenarios that can happen, and I'll explain them at the end. So just stay with me for a bit, and I'll get to it. No problem at all. But very good question, and I'm definitely gonna talk about this part in particular. But yeah, to sort of close it out, I've put all the stats in front of you from the split. Probably the worst we've ever had. There's not a single area where we have an advantage. It's all negative. We're all behind. It's pick for scaling and hope that the enemy team doesn't do anything. And I think one of the best examples is if you look at Team Heretics, right? Team Heretics, when they played against us, again, scaling comp, they weren't proactive. They let us scale. Now, they did have a better scaling team, but they didn't do anything on their side, so we were kind of handshaking. Then we took the advantages, and we had very bad team fights that allowed Team Heretics to come back in the game, right? And that's the issue, is that if we're not proactive enough, teams that have better synergy are going to be able to build, top lane, bot lane dives, are going to be able to secure neutral objectives much better. And from this point on, you're just dying a slow death. You're just rolling over and letting them take over the game. And you can't win a single team fight because they're stronger than you. You can't gain vision advantage because they have control of the map. I mean, you're just losing by getting your side of the map being burnt bit by bit. So when you have a team that's not working together, obviously you have to make some changes. And the changes are going to be the biggest problem, because as you mentioned correctly, we're at the very beginning of the season, and because of this weird split construction, how do we get players? Where do we get them? And that's the problem. Razork tried very hard to make things happen, but the synergy is not there. I said there won't be any roster change. Yeah, so I knew that was going to come up. I was hoping that, very naive of me, that we could at least try to scratch top 8, right? And try to see some improvement. The thing is, when we went into week 3, you could see the mental boom from everyone, and you didn't have a team anymore. You had a solo queue matchup. That's all you had. And I think when you reach to that point where the first 2 weeks we sucked, but some games where we got some advantages, we just didn't manage to close the game. You're like, well, at least there's something, right? There's something where there's elements of victories that we can maybe build on. And going into week 3, it's a disaster. There's nothing to present. Like, even against Astralis looked like a top 5 team against us. And when you get to that point, you know, I'll admit that I was wrong, but my comment came from a certain perspective, right? So as things evolve, as you're going into the last week, you're like, well, I'm sorry. There has to be changes, because clearly, if you keep this team with the mental boom, with the pieces that aren't connecting, well, you're just gonna go top 10 every split, and then just wait for the end of the season. Do you want fans to come knocking on Dardo and Sam's door with frigging shotguns because they will have gone completely mental? I don't think so. If these people still care about the team, about their organization, they need to act fast. And not just because of fan pressure. It's because it's their duty. It's within their motto that we're a high performance esports organization. Well, okay, stick to your motto. Stick to your values. That's all I'm saying. Right? I do agree that Razork seems to be the only one that's still trying. He's the only one that looks alive in a team of 4 corpses. And he's there trying to motivate people, trying to drag these lifeless players through the finish line. And it puts into perspective his performance, where he's just trying to make something happen, right? And that's the problem. It's like when you have only one dude that's there, and he's trying to do stuff, and everyone else is kind of passive, well, you know. So yeah, that's kind of where we at right now in terms of the team. Now, what we need to look at, and I know that's what you guys, your pitchforks and your torches are going to be raised right now, is Dardo. Now, Dardo has been with the team since beginning of 2020, and has probably, out of any team manager I can remember, the worst track record that any team manager can have. Now, I'm going to preface this segment by saying I'm not coming after anyone's job here. This episode isn't here to say fire him, fire there. It's just to make a statement and have a look at our current situation and discuss it. Okay? If Fnatic want to fire Dardo, that's okay. I'm not asking them to fire Dardo. I'm just saying let's have a look at what Dardo has achieved, or lack thereof, with Fnatic. The most obvious one is saying, well, we got 0 trophies. Now you can say, well, we did get some second places. Yeah, look at the finals we've played. We got, most of the time, 3-0'd. Twice against G2, and one against Mad Lions. I think we went 1-3, right? Throughout the 6 splits, he's been team manager. We've had 0 rookies. You can talk about Adam, but Adam's story with Fnatic technically should have never existed, right? The story is, and I got this from a reliable source, is that an agent approached Adam and said, hey, I'm in talks with Fnatic. Then he went to Fnatic and said, hey, I'm in talks with Adam. And he created something out of nothing. So the Adam transfer should have never happened. And again, the Adam transfer is a patched up roster where you have to bring in Bwipo in the jungle and hope that he does well. It just happened that Bwipo was insane in jungle, and we should have tried to do something maybe to keep him. Because in my opinion, he was like one of the best junglers on that split. Like, he was terrorizing people at Worlds with his pathing, right? But that's another discussion. But in terms of rookies, in the history of Fnatic, the best years, the best seasons have always been when we've had a rookie in our team, or a rookie that we've developed into the next year. I'm going to take the most obvious one, is when Reckless initially came into the roster. He was too young to play with Fnatic at the time, and when we came in, he just demolished everyone. You look afterwards, 2015, we had Febiven, we had Huni, and can't remember Steelback was a rookie at the time. But at least Febiven and Huni. Febiven, 2015, insane mid laner, 1v1s, Faker, one of the best players in the world. Huni goes insane, plays the most unexpected top laners as well, becomes a legend in his first year. 2018, we have Bwipo coming in, and we continue to develop Broxa and Caps from the year prior. We go to Worlds. We look like one of the best teams in the world, right? 2019, we have Nemesis coming in. Very complicated start, but we managed to challenge the best version of G2 and one of the best teams in Europe historically that existed. Going forward, no more rookies to be seen. Only veterans that are working together, and no rookies that have this upcoming talent, that have this hunger to prove themselves and be one of the best. And I think that's one of the pieces that really hurt us, you know. Bwipo and Nemesis are available right now. I don't know about that one, you know. I'm happy of the time they had with Fnatic, but let's keep them where they are. Okay. What I was saying, but yes, the rookies. Sorry. This year, NELSC has seen a lot of rookies coming in to the scene. What I was hoping is that if we lose upset, we get an upcoming ADC. We could have gotten Exakick, but Exakick wanted to play with DOS, and for some reason, from what's being said, again, there's a lot of rumors, but it seems to be somewhat confirmed, that Rux was locked in early, and it was like, well, trying to find an ADC that wants to play with him. And that is such a risky and dangerous practice, especially when you bring in someone like Rux, who, you know, whatever the quality you perceive in this player, isn't necessarily the hottest player, the hottest support coming from the ERL. So I don't think you're going to find a lot of ADCs are going to say, oh shit, Rux is your support, sign me in, dude. You know? And this is not a jab at Rux, you know? I'm just saying in terms of how he's perceived by the people in the scene. And the problem is it's not that he's proven anything as well during the split, where he could have proven people wrong and say, well, should have played with me, look at what I'm doing. You know? So we kind of closed ourselves to new talent that we could have developed, that we could have made the franchise of Fnatic, because that's the thing as well, right? The fact that we don't develop our own players anymore makes it we don't have this Fnatic brand player. Because that was something that was unique about Fnatic. It was like almost homegrown players. Even if they came from another team before, it was like, yeah, these guys are always Fnatic. When you think about Broxa, you know? When, like, even Caps, we brought him in. The Hoonies, the Febiven, the Nemesis, everyone like this. You're like, yeah, we're going to go get this talent. And for me, what it says is that we have lost the scouting potential that we had before, where we had people within the organization, team managers or other, that would actually be able to identify the upcoming players and do what's necessary to, put a put their hands on it. And with Fnatic not getting any trophies, I think the attractiveness of the team has kind of been lost over the time. People would rather maybe sign with a team like G2, for instance, or Rogue or Mad Lions, who have more recent success. They seem to, doing rather well. Well, not Rogue, sorry, with Koi. I was still calling them Rogue, but Koi. Um, and so you see Hexakick and DOS going to a team like SK, who didn't even make playoffs, I believe. And look at that, they're doing super well, even though they don't have massive superstars on the team. At least they qualified, and they beat G2. They beat Vitality, 1v1 on their one-on-one games. That's kind of annoying. That's kind of annoying that what we were famous for, that is bringing rookie talents, completely lost it. Exekick actually outclassed Reckless. Well, I mean, everyone was outclassing our whole team towards the last week. There was no substance to this team in week 3, so I don't think we can evaluate our players or the strength of our opponents. Just no one wanted to do anything in the end, So what I'm saying is we brought Reckless purely from business perspective. Not even business perspective. It's just that's all that was left in the basket of ADCs. From what's being said, he was like our 5th or 6th choice. So it's not like, oh, we bring in Reckless to sell more jerseys. I don't think that was the reasoning. It's like, well, Reckless is what is left from our list, so we're just gonna go with him to not go even lower than our list. My issue is that I remember vividly Dardo saying that seeing the way Reckless left Fnatic, which was kind of last minute, he didn't necessarily find it right to have him back in the team. And a couple of years after, he's back there. So even then, it just with what had been said at the time, and this situation, it just feels like there's a lot of desperate moves, and there's no like building a team. Like it doesn't feel like there's a strategy. It's like who's available that looks kind of good, and who's accessible for us, and let's just take it, right? So. Not impressed by Wunder's performance. He got solo killed by every rookie top laner. Wunder didn't have a good beginning of the split. I did feel like he got a bit better towards the end. Especially like when he was playing more carry tops. Like when he played the Gwen, when he played Camille. He was doing super well. And I think we need to allow him back on those type of top laners where he was so good when he was on G2. I feel like we kind of castrated Wunder in a sense. And when you enable him on carry picks where he doesn't necessarily have to play weak side and he's willing to play a bit more harder, then, like, I get that he has a good Gragas sort of pocket pick, but man, it feels a bit desperate when you're like, well, it's just your own Gragas duty again, And it's not like he's 1v9ing with the Gragas. Like he usually loses or gets 1v1, as you said. So, yeah, that's like I haven't completely given up on Wunder, but I do agree that he was a bit disappointing on that aspect. What happened with our amazing scouts? Well, I'm not too sure about that, but we've lost the people or whatever it was that gave us the potential to get those young players. So rough year and it's just February. Yep, I agree. But yeah, just to follow through. Now, to add on to Dardo's record, is that a storied organization like Fnatic, who never missed playoffs, has finally done it, has finally missed playoffs, so they don't even have that record to put in the history books anymore. And what we're living today is just an accumulation of what's been going wrong ever since, of just lack of bringing in new players that we could build and that we could create like a storied roster behind. It's just been like putting pieces together and hopefully it will work out. Happens that the coaches say, yeah, there's a lot of patching that has to be done. Yamato is saying, yeah, it was very hard to actually do anything with the roster, and we managed to do the best despite all the dysfunctionalities within the team. Like, where's the strategy in building the roster in the end? And so, if we don't have a clear plan of where we want to go with the roster, and we're to a point where we're just taking what's left and making bad locking decisions that are closing the doors for all of potential upcoming players. What what's going on? Why are we not waking up? You know? And most of the times we're doing lower bracket runs now. We're having to do like the miracle runs like we did last split. Like, we've lost that dominance. We've lost that team that, oh shit, today we're playing Fnatic. Damn. You know? And for people who have been following Fnatic for years and years, like I have, it sucks. It sucks to see this fall from grace over the years, which just has been rotting. And in the end, we're we're just at the edge of completely losing what made Fnatic special. And something that shocked me in the latest Life of Legends, or Legends in Action, sorry, is that when Dardo spoke to the team, he said something that just made me feel like his his style of managing just feels like outdated and not adapted to the the new context of the LEC season, where he talks about putting as many band-aids as possible. The problem is we don't have the 18 games to have band-aids, and that was working before, where we were just able to lock in top 6 or just able to, you know, get enough games that we managed to find some elements that were working until we eventually got discovered and we didn't win finals, or we went into third place because, well, we had only one playstyle. And so if we continue with this mindset of, well, we're not winning right now, but it's fine, we'll find some band-aids, when you only have a handful of weeks to play, you can't expect success at the end. You can't say, oh, well, yeah, we're going to get those band-aids on game 7 or 8 when you only have, one win. And the smaller teams, like Astralis, are actually getting some wins here and there, just enough to get into top 8. When other teams that have rookies or players that get back into the LEC who are hungry to win, like in BDS or SK, actually don't necessarily have the best players but have good synergy, work well together, and able to beat the top teams or at least challenge them. So do with that what you will. Again, I'm not here to go after anyone's jobs, but this is the situation that we have with Dardo. And obviously, I don't have all the information that goes backstage. Maybe there's a lot of stuff that I'm missing out and that maybe explain why we're in a situation. But we've had 3 to 4 years now to fix any failing system inside the organization, the teams whatsoever. And the status is nothing's been fixed, and it just feels like everything is worse in the end. So, what do I think of our drafts? Is the coach hardly bad, or is it possible to draft because Red Cliffs can play only 3 champions and rocks his badge with range subs? So, the drafts, in my opinion, were pretty good within the first few weeks. And then in the end, it's just the final week. Just I don't think you can analyze the last week because, I mean, the spirit was dead within the team. But I felt like our only redeeming factors in the first few weeks were our drafts. But the problem is, I think we have limitations on because we don't know how we want to play. So my metaphor that I gave a few weeks ago was that you're giving them 3-star Michelin dinner, but you're giving them to pigs who can't really appreciate the food that's being prepared for them. They're just gobbling it up. They're putting it all over their face. So the fact that, you know, some of the drafts were good, but we're just not able to execute it, either comes from, again, lack of synergy and lack of understanding the draft from the players, or lack of skill to execute them properly from the players who have those champions between their hands. So that's why right now, again, I'm willing to give this coaching staff a chance and see that with the new players that should come, right, which should be expected, that we have a new roster going into the rest of the season, that they are enabled to draft more champions or have players that are willing to play maybe more aggressive champions, more variety, order pick as well, where we don't pick ourselves into losing matchups, but we can actually wait until pick 4 or 5 before locking in and getting lane advantage, or matchup advantage. That's also what you need to consider as well for the coaches, right? So I always had a lot of praise for Hiva. I was very happy we got him, and there's no reason that Hiva was able to accomplish quite a bit with Misfits last year, with the changes in the roster that happened, and that he's not able to do anything with Fnatic, unless, again, there's issues that go beyond his realm of action, and in that case, well, the changes with the players need to be made, and that's where the problem is, right? So that's all I'll have to say about Dardo. We'll see the decisions that will be made. Unless you guys haven't seen, Sam Matthews tweeted that tomorrow we'll have communications on how they'll be moving forward. Just like this, if, I'm saying if, Dardo happens to not continue with Fnatic, we could bring back Young Buck as team manager, because Young Buck was team manager with Fnatic when he was sort of dual coaching with Dylan at the time, and that worked rather well. Now, obviously, we did have Caps and Broxat at the time, but I think he's able to find those good players, enable their entry within the team. Like, he had Markun and Advien back then, and yeah, they they did rather well when they arrived with Excel. So we'll see, we'll see. I'm just hoping that if Dardo does leave, that someone that brings in has much more potential in terms of bringing in rookies and building a roster. What was the problem with Yamato? Why did we give up on him? Well, with Yamato, the thing is, right, is that if we don't consider everything that's been said right now, when you give him 2 years with this roster and those players, and you see that in the end, not much has been achieved, and it's still the status quo, you can think that, like, it makes sense to change things up. So obviously we've had background information afterwards, so we know a bit more of what happens behind the scene. But at the moment, it was like, yeah, okay, Yamato tried, but it didn't work out. The drafts weren't the best as well, so yeah, that it kind of made sense to move it. But yeah, it's again, it's a situation of, like, we had bad drafts but better team synergy before, and now we've had better drafts but team synergy doesn't exist. It seems we can't have one without the other. He overachieved with what he was given. Um, debatable, debatable. On paper, he should have at least had a trophy, in my opinion, with the roster he had last week. Going beyond, anything that happened within the team, the mental state or how he played, with the caliber of players, he should have gone for either at minimum second place, but there was a trophy there. There was a trophy, but that can be a discussion for another day, because there's everything you need to consider on the moment when everything was announced and the roster was made, and everything that's been said afterwards, which gives you a different perspective on, what what has been achieved and what could have been achieved. But yeah, again, different perspective. Um, in terms of changes, so we're finally there. We're getting there, guys. After you've heard me ramble for minutes and minutes now. Now, this is just my personal judgment on all of this, on who we should keep and who we should try to replace, at least. Um, it was a very hard decision to make, to be honest, but the latest voice comms uh, gave me a different perspective, right? So I think if we're going to make as many impactful changes, we have to keep Wunder and Razork, so most of our top sides. And it hurts to say, but we unfortunately need to change Humanoid. And the reason we need to change Humanoid is because Razork and Humanoid don't work. And it's annoying because, like I said, I feel like Humanoid is one of the only lanes that's working properly, right? But there's two elements. I feel like Razork, if he's in a good atmosphere, he can really get back to his old level. And I feel we need someone like Razork within the team to bring the spirits up. Again, he's the only one who's trying. He is the only one who's trying in this team. And it would feel unfair and really weird that you would get rid of the only one who still gives a damn about the team and about your organization, and it still looks like he wants to win. And again, Wunder hasn't had the best split, but we've seen what he's been able to do on more carry top laners. And I think, again, if we have better synergy, if we know how to play a bit better, he's going to be able to not have all those issues that he's had this split. Losing Humanoid is a big issue because who do you replace him with? And where do you put him? Are you going to put him in the LVP in the Spanish league and bring in Nafkela, he's talented, but it would be an insane jump. It would be like when Dajor joined Astralis, when he barely had a split in the NLC at the time. It would be that caliber. So I'm not sure about that. Probably have to look into a different mid laner. That's one element. Second element, fortunately, I don't think this bot lane's going to work out. My gripe is that Reckless is still playing his old style. It's not working anymore. And he's still going into his bad habits of hard tilting, completely shutting himself down. And for me, like, it pisses me off because I mentioned this back then, that if you're so sad that you went to G2, that you went to KC, and you're so happy to finally be back in Fnatic, don't fuck up your opportunity. Make the changes. Make the mental changes. Make the gameplay changes. Do what's needed to actually show that you appreciate that you're back with Fnatic. And don't be just, well, I got my seat back, I can just revert to how I played before. And that's exactly what he showed us. And I'm so disappointed that that's the path he chose. So, if that's how he goes on forward, it may sound rude, but I think he needs to retire. His time is done. And he's not going to achieve anything on any other roster. And he can tell himself that. He can say, oh, no. Next roster, I'm going to win. Next roster, I'm going to do this. No, I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. You've shown your limits once again. And if you need a good support to finally do something, that's another issue again. So that's another problem because getting rid of Reckless so soon, it's like, where do you put him? Who do you replace him with? Do you bring back Upset? And does Upset even want to play for Fnatic? Because that's the thing, right? You fans out there, you guys, you think it's just like a game of chess, It's just like, oh, I'm gonna remove this piece and I'm gonna put this piece in the space, as if the players didn't have any choices. Like, no, you play for us now, and that's it. Like, if Upset doesn't want to play for Fnatic, you're not going to be able to force him. You can't put a gun to his head and say, okay, click on the mouse and press buttons on the keyboard. Because if you bring a player that's not in the mood of playing, you're shooting yourself in the foot. So then brings in the other questions, like, who do you pair him with? Do you keep Rux? I wouldn't keep Rux, personally. He hasn't shown anything where I'm like, well, at least he's standing out. He's trying. There's something. He's the other big disappointment coming in. And again, it's like, Rux could be the easiest one to change. You can bring him back to the LVP, pair him back with Bean, bring in Advian. Is that the move? Because Advian is more capable of playing those mage supports, right? He has more of that flexibility. But yeah, is that what has to be done? So it's really a bad situation, to be in right now, to be honest. Other elements could be to bring in players from Excel to switch it around. Do we go for Targamas, for instance? I don't know. It's I think it's the most complicated changes, because not only do you need to make those changes, but then you got to make it click within the few weeks that are left. And it's like, well, okay, we've made the changes. How do we get rid of our current players? How do you get rid of, like, not saying it's necessarily going to happen, but let's say what I said actually does happen. It's like, how do you get rid of Humanoid and Reckless? Who takes them in their roster? Excel might take Humanoid, but who's going to take Reckless? No, actually, Excel wouldn't take Humanoid. They're probably going to put Abadage. They have Abadage on the bench. Like, we can't even give him to Excel. So, I don't know. Upset wanted to retire with Fnatic. He said it himself. Yeah, if you try hard enough. I mean, what is trying hard enough? Like, what needs to be done? Because he wanted to play with Fnatic if he still had Hilly sign. That's not an option. So what's the other option? And the ball is in his court. Like, he can say whatever he wants. If we are really like, shit, Upset, we need you in the team. We need you in the team. Then okay, fair enough. But you're gonna have to agree to what he says. And what does he agree on? Does he want more changes? Is he gonna say who he wants, and you're gonna have to agree on that? So, insurance that will build around him. But yeah, I mean, again, it's like, what's building around him? Does he Does he want to get rid of more players? Does he want to get rid of everyone and just have him, and he picks the 4 people around him? That's another problem altogether. So, but I think trading Humanoid for VTO, it's very bad. Razork had good synergy with him on Misfits. No, discussed this already. No, let's not get VTO. Let's not get VTO, dude. Let's not get VTO. Let's not get VTO. No. No, 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 no. You want to take on top of Razork another player who easily gets affected by depression and who chokes in playoffs? No, 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 no. Like, I understand that he had good synergy with Razork, and he would have Hiva with him. It's like some pieces could fit, but I don't think he would. I don't feel like there would be the resources to propel him higher than what he achieved on Misfits. I think Misfits was his peak. I don't think he'll do anything higher. Like, there are some good arguments, because yeah, he played with Razork, he could be with Hiva again. So, but and he's someone who, it does feel like he does grind the game, and he's quite ambitious. So actually, you know what? Let me check something real quickly. I know I saved this somewhere, because there was an image of how many games were played per players on Champions queue, sorry. Excel VTO above 10 games. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw it, but most of the Fnatic players played less than 10 games, or some of them played 0. Now, I don't know how impactful Champions queue is on the performance of players. If it really does help them improve, there's nothing that can help you evaluate. You can't make a sort of statistical explanation of the small group of data that you have. But okay, yeah, sure. Okay, so all the Astralis players grinded super hard over 20 games each. Um, and so has SK players. You're like, oh, well, those are the teams that qualified, right? But you have other players that also qualified and played 0 games, like Hillisang, Kaiser, Larson. You have players that have played less than 10 games as well that are on the top teams, like Caps, Neon, uh, what's his name? Crony, Shigenda. So I'm sure we can bring back Nemesis and Upset, find half decent sub, and make actually a functional team for. I mean, understand there's a fan base for Nemesis, but bringing back Nemesis is not the play. I will tell you that much. He has hatred for Fnatic. It's been very clear that he doesn't wish to play for the organization anymore. So, and while he's doing super well in solo queue, there you have to make a distinction between people who are popping off in solo queue and players who are able to play within a team environment. And I don't think Nemesis is able to get back into a team environment and perform. So yeah, I think people need to sort of let it go with Nemesis. He did his time with Fnatic. He did as well as he could, but yeah, I don't think he's getting back into a team anytime soon. So that's gonna be my take on this. I think either we import an LCK mid laner from a challenger team, I guess. I don't know. is that what we're down to? We're back to bringing Koreans into Fnatic. I have no idea, guys. I have no idea, but I'll leave you on this. Right? Is that eventually changes are going to be made. It might not be the ones you're expecting, but keep supporting the team, keep supporting the organization, and respect the players most of all, but don't let go of your passion and show to anyone, from Sam to the management to everyone, that we want better, and we're not gonna stop supporting tomorrow, and we have expectations, and that we want a structure that lives to those expectations. But still be respectful, no flaming, no insulting. I don't want to see that players are receiving death threats again. That you can't consider yourself a fan if you're down to doing this. So yeah, we'll see. Tomorrow we'll get some news. Maybe I'll tweet about it. Maybe I'll discuss about it. Maybe it'll be another podcast for next week. The unfortunate thing is that there won't be more podcasts for the rest of the split because Fnatic is eliminated, and this podcast is called Inside Fnatic's Brush. So no Fnatic, no subject. What I will do, depending on the schedule, is if Valorant starts, maybe I'll do a small podcast on what's happening with Valorant. Because if you don't watch the game, if you don't play it, I'll just say this, and you're a fan of Fnatic, of the organization as a whole, be excited for Valorant. Valorant has a crazy team for Fnatic, and we should expect some big things for this year. So yeah, look forward to that. But guys, I know we're hurting. I know we're waiting for a better Fnatic, and hopefully we get some exciting news tomorrow. On that note, I'm gonna leave you guys. I need to run to the gym before it closes. But thank you for everyone who came into the chat or who was just watching and lurking. Appreciate you tuning in. I'll see you guys next time. Don't know how it will be. Make sure to follow the socials. Follow me on Twitch to get notifications every time I go live, or if you want to watch the VOD or listen to them on Spotify. Let's hope for the best tomorrow, and maybe we'll discuss it again. And again, there's more splits to be played. The season is still long, so fingers crossed, guys. Have a good evening, have a good weekend, and don't forget, always Fnatic. Bye bye.